So today's webinar marks the start of a series where we're going to be taking a look, kind of boiling back to basics on Google Apps. But before we start talking about Google Apps themselves, I want to hopefully clear up some confusion about our accounts with Google, because while Google does a great job of giving us a lot of different products and a lot of different free access to some great tools, they do a terrible job of communicating the specifics of those sorts of applications and how they work with each other. And indeed, sometimes what we have the rights to and what we have access to within our current level, within our current subscription level. So I'm going to say there's three levels of access that we have to Google, our relationship with Google, our Google account. The first and most basic is for lack of better terms, a free Gmail account. I don't know what Google calls this internally, but let's just call it ourselves a free Gmail account. This is when you sign up for Gmail, you have a xxx@gmail.com address, and you can use that Gmail account to gain access to the entire suite of Google tools that are available for free, all of the free tools. So everything that we're going to be talking about in this in this series of videos, of webinars, are included in the free Gmail account. You have access to Google Calendar, to Docs, the spreadsheet, all of those tools. A part of that is you have 5 gigabytes of storage for those apps on Google Drive, on Google's organizational tool. We'll be talking more about the structure in a moment, but you have 5 gigabytes of space that's available, that's shared between your photos and your email and all of your documents, which many people are going to find inadequate. So Google gives us our kind of dipping our toe in the water account level, something called Google One, which allows us to effectively buy more storage space for the different tools that we're subscribed to, so that we can store more photos, we can store more documents, and we aren't up against the headroom of running out of storage space because we are hopefully using all of these free tools and creating lots of data. So Google One is the subscription that we purchase that basically gives us more storage for the free tools. Then we have Google Workspace. Now, Google Workspace is Google's competition to Microsoft Office. It is access to the entire suite of tools in an environment that allows us to manage those tools. With the free tools, you can go in and you can manage your account, things like your password, etc. But you can't manage who has access to different files, you can't create new email addresses for your business. You don't have a management console available in the free apps. In Google Workspace, you have access to managing the entire suite of tools, so it's designed for businesses. And those are the 3 levels. I've got to say, I don't love this. I love the fact that Google gives us access to all of these tools for free. I don't like the fact that it's hard to tell just by looking at and using a tool whether you're in the free version or whether you're in the Google Workspace version of the tool. Gmail looks and acts pretty much identically, as do all of the other applications. They work the same, so it creates some confusion, and it can cause you some issues if you have a free personal account and a Google Workspace business account. You have to pay a very close attention to which Google account you're in as you do different activities and save different files, because they might not be saved where you think they're going to be saved, depending on which account you're in. At least that is it's kind of a first world problem, though, really, isn't it? But that is the structure and the organization of our Google accounts. I hope that helped clear things up. Now, if we're going to get started and kind of really take a look and master the Google apps, all of the Google apps, we've got to recognize, to start with, where the apps fit in the entire Google system. And I have broken the tools that we use, that we're going to be kind of the tools that we'll be talking about as far as working our business goes today, into 3 categories: communications, productivity, and organizational tools. And the main Google applications in each one of those. So in the communication space, the main tool is Gmail. Google's email package, which we can use in our browser, on our smartphone. And for many of us, it is our email platform of choice. Attached to, or part of that system, is Google has a chat tool a meeting tool, an online meeting tool, very similar to, say, Zoom, and a new collaborative tool called Google Spaces, which I don't know anybody that's using, but you can kind of create work environments, like small little ad hoc groups or more permanent groups that work on the same items and share resources. So those are the communications tools: chat, Meet, most importantly, Gmail. In the productivity space, I think everything kind of hangs off Google Calendar. You can argue with me on that, but Google Calendar to me is the heart of many of our productivity systems because it tells us what we're supposed to be doing at any time, and it sets our agenda for what we're doing as far as getting things done. Now, attached to Google Calendar, or kind of companion products to Google Calendar, are Google Keep and Google Tasks. Google Keep is Google's note-taking app, which competes to a certain extent with Evernote or Microsoft's OneNote. It allows us to collect notes on the fly and integrate them with everything else that we do in the Google space. And Google Tasks is just assigning us tasks. And all of those will fold very nicely in and work very nicely with Google Calendar. And really, when we talk about all of these applications, the beauty of these Google applications is the sum is very much greater than the total of all of the parts. That when you start to use Gmail by itself, it's a good and useful tool. But if you use Gmail and you integrate it with Google Calendar, you've got both Gmail and Google Calendar are both more valuable tools because of the integration when we put them together. Now, as far as organizing all of our information and managing all of our information, that is, all of these applications live under the umbrella of Google Drive, Google's online service where we store all of our files. And Google Drive is the cloud-based service that basically serves us all of our files and the different applications that we use. And in the Google Apps area, in the applications that we use for Office, we're going to concentrate on 4 of them today, or in this series. Google Docs, which is Google's word processing application, Google Sheets, which is Google's spreadsheet, Slides, which is the presentation package, and we'll touch on Forms, which is their Forms collection. Now, fitting all of these tools together is the key to really getting the most out of the Google ecosystem and recognizing which tool you're in and which tool does what it's supposed to do best and how it fits, how it communicates, and how it interacts with the other tools. That's really one of the keys to mastering this entire world of the different Google apps. In order for us to get off on the right foot in understanding and really mastering this whole Google ecosystem as far as our productivity and our content creation goes, we really have to start with Google Drive and understanding what Google Drive is. And Google Drive is a bit of a chameleon because it's more than just an online storage system, although the name would indicate it's like a hard drive, Google Drive. But it is more than a drive because Google Drive is also the vehicle with which we receive or we gain access to the different applications that we're going to be using, the different Office applications. They're hosted within Google Drive. So it's more than just a storage. It's more than just a Dropbox. It's more than just it's more than just an online storage system. It does more for us. So what does Google Drive do for us? Well, obviously, it stores our documents and files, and it gives us a file management system of folders that we can organize our folders, our data in. And I gotta say, it's not my favorite as far as it's not its best feature. The Google Drive, as far as organizing your files, it doesn't have the best user interface in the world. So you've kind of got to bite the bullet and figure it out and get on top of it and understand the intricacies or the subtleties of Google Drive. And that takes time, and you often will lose things and you'll be a little bit frustrated with it. But thank goodness it's from Google, and search is your friend. So you can always find what you're looking for through search if you can't navigate to it visually, which does occasionally happen. Beyond the storage of those documents and files, we can also share all of the documents and files, which is really one of the most important features of Google Drive, is it manages how documents are accessed, who can access them, and what permissions they have when they access those documents, which allows us to collaborate with others. So when you go into Google Drive, when you fire up Google Drive, you're brought into the Google Drive interface, which is basically your filing system. It's a file management system. And you can see here, it's got the files that it thinks that we're most interested in using. It's got a listing of all of our different files that we have stored on Google Drive. Down the left-hand side, we can create a new document. in here so we can create a Google Doc. We'll be going into each one of these over the next few weeks: Google Doc, Google Sheets, Google Forms. And you can see that these are the big four. These are the ones that we use the most inside of Google, but there's more. There's Google Drawings, My Maps, where you create your own maps, Google Sites, where you can actually create your own website if you want, App Scripts and Jamboard, and you can also connect other apps to it as well. You can see I've got MindMeister connected here to my Google Drive, so I can store my mind mapping maps in Google Drive should I choose to. But you can see here, this is where it's a little bit different than just an online storage system, because we can launch these applications, these web apps, directly from Google Drive. We can also upload files if we want to, say, upload PDFs, or if we want to upload documents, and we can download files from here as well. So you can either do whole folders or files themselves. We can upload them to Google Drive. Now, what we can search for and browse through our files in a couple of different ways. Files that other people have shared with you, because people are often sharing documents back and forth. So here are the different shared documents that we have. You can go by recent ones, and you can also star the most important documents should you choose to do that. But let's just go back to my main Drive view. And from here, let's talk about the different permissions that we do and how we manage documents inside of Google Drive. So you can obviously, as we saw here, upload our own folders or files to Google Drive if we want, or anything we create inside of Google Drive, any document we create will be saved inside of Google Drive. Now, once you've created a document, if you want to manage that document, you right-click on it, and here you can see the main features that Google Drive gives us as far as file management goes. We can preview the document. We can open it with a different application if it allows us to open with different applications. Most important, we can share the document. This is what we're going to do most often with documents, that we're not just editing ourselves, but we're going to share the documents with others. So if this is to share with collaborators, with other people who are going to work on the document with us, and within this, you've always got the ability to have somebody as an editor of the document, meaning they have full access to the document. They can make substantial changes to the document. They can comment, so that they can just add comments that you can then incorporate in the document as you're editing a document, or they can just view it. There's some other nice features here as well as you can add an expiry date. So if you say, okay, after 2 weeks, we were done with this project and I don't want anybody else accessing this document, or this project is locked, no changes after that. So we put in an expiry date. You can also transfer the ownership of a document, which is very useful. One of the kind of challenges of when you start to collaborate with others is who owns the document and where does that document reside. Ownership of a document is an important part of the administration of any document. So being able to transfer the ownership to somebody else who might be taking over the file or taking over the project is an important feature that you should pay attention to inside of Google Docs. And you can also kick people out. You no longer have access. You are forbidden to have access to this document. So you have those management features within when you just right-click the mouse when you go into the sharing menu. The other way that we can often share documents is maybe we don't want somebody to collaborate on the documents, and we don't want to actually share it with them directly where we know who they are and what they're doing on the document. But sometimes we just want to take a document and we just want to get a link and we want to share that document out with somebody else. Maybe you've created an FAQ on how to fix something or how to do something, and you don't really want to have that person collaborate, people that you deliver this to collaborate on the document, but you just want to send them a copy of the document that they can click on, that they can read themselves for their own information. And so here we can create links that way. So you can create restricted links, and you can create ones that are just, in other words, ones that are just for people inside of your community, or you can create open links for people who are outside of your, this is the workplace, the Google Workplace feature, outside of your working group, so that anyone on the outside can gain access. You can set it up. And again, if you click on this side here, you can allow them to comment and edit, as well as just view the documents where you're sharing it with people outside of your workspace. So those are some of the kind of the different link options that you have sharing documents inside of Google Drive. The rest of these options are really just administrative options, creating a shortcut that you can put on your desktop so you can quickly return to a document, moving them around and organizing them, starring them so you can easily find them later, renaming the document. Those are all kind of administrative. The functional pieces are the share and getting links aspect of Google of your files inside of Google Drive. Now, this can be for files that you create inside of Google Docs or inside of the Google Apps, or files that you upload as well. I know for a lot of you that I just covered ground that you probably really understood as far as Google goes, but I think it's important that we kind of take a step back and make sure that we all understand the basics, because of the way that Google does business. We take a lot of things for granted. I assume that you all understand the difference between a Gmail account and a Google One account and a Google Workspace account, and I know here I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I assume that you know, but I know that you don't know. I know that we all sometimes get a little bit confused, and even I get confused. I realize now, earlier on I said that that we give you they give you 5 gigabytes of storage, and I just remembered, no, it's 15 gigabytes. So it's easy enough to get a little bit lost in this. But it's important to understand the building blocks that we're getting to. Before we leave talking about Google Drive and really talking about your Google account, I want to jump over into my personal account here. So I've got the Workspace account is where we were looking. This is my own personal Gmail account that I kind of keep to make sure that first of all, so that I can have stuff that's outside of the work environment, but so that I can also make sure and check what's available in the free version of Google. So this is just the free account. But it's important for you to occasionally go under your profile picture and go into manage your Google account. Now, I said the difference between Google Workplace and Google and your Gmail account is management. The type of management that we're talking about in Workplace is access to files for team members, etc. Your account settings here are all about your personal privacy and your personal backup, making sure that you have access to your information and you have control over that data, who sees it, where it's seen, and where it lives. So I'm going to share with you in the notes a video I recently did called Taking Control of Your Google Account. We won't go through this right now, but I think it's a really good tutorial to show you how to protect your privacy in Google, what Google does with your information as they look at it, and what you can do inside of here to enhance your security and also to back up your data and make sure that you are the one who owns all of your data, and understand where Google stores all of that data and how you can pull it out of the system should you choose to. So as I say, I will be sharing this document, this video with you, taking control of your Google account. And I really encourage you to take, I don't know, it's 12 minutes, 14 minutes, take that time and watch this video, and just to inform yourself of what privacy settings and security settings are built into Google. That's your responsibility to choose how you want to use. You should know this. You're sharing a lot of information inside of your Google account, so it's in our best interest to make sure that we understand as much as possible how that's used and what we can do to protect our information and to back that information up. Now, before we wrap things up, I said off the top of the title of today's webinar, getting started with the Google apps. And we spent a lot of time talking about Google Drive, which I think is essential to understand as far as understanding what you can do with Google Apps. And when we were in Google Drive earlier, I showed you that we can create new apps. You recognize here the apps being Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides. And you see there's quite a few apps available to us, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. I don't understand Google as a company, but they have released way more tools to us as apps that are available to us within our Google account than just these ones listed here. And you can see a list of them if you go in from any of your Google account pages. So from inside of Gmail or in Google Drive, as we are here in Google Calendar, look for the waffle menu, the way they call it Google Apps. This gives us a quick access to a lot of the different apps that Google gives us for free. And as you see here, there's more than just the mainstream Google Sheets and Google Docs. And there's also, they've got, things like Google Sites, which is, I don't know anybody who uses it, but if you want Google to host your website, which sounds like a good idea on the surface, doesn't it? But in reality, I don't know anybody that does it. This is where you go to set up Google Sites, and you'll see that you'll recognize some of these tools, but other ones you won't recognize at all. Of course, Google Photos you recognize, Google Translate, does a phenomenal job of translating from one language to another. Most of us don't know what Google Vault is. Google does a terrible job of explaining what Vault is. It's where you, if you're in Google Workspace, it's where you store your employees' documents and you archive them. I believe that's what I've been able to find out. We see some of the educational apps here available to us here, like Google Classroom. So there are all of these different apps available, which I encourage you to spend a little bit of time poking around and playing with. But there is more. Oh my gosh, there's more. If we go into the marketplace, this new Google Workspace marketplace, we can see other apps and other tools that we can also integrate with our Google Workspace or our Google account. And there are business essentials, things like other online storage systems. So as you start to kind of figure out if Google apps are at the heart of your working life, it's probably worth taking some time and seeing exactly what tools are available for you to add to Google Drive. A lot of people survive very well using Google's different apps without actually going full in to the entire Google ecosystem and using all of these different tools. But if you do decide to, as I say, the sum is going to be greater than the numbers of all the value of all of the parts because they integrate so nicely together. So this is a good exercise to go through and take a look at what additional tools you can install. And almost all of these are free. Most of these are free that you can install and make part of your Google Workspace and part of the whole Google Drive system. So that's it. This is just the kind of the first step. Next week on Webinar Wednesday, we are going to go in and we're going to take a look at using Google Docs, getting in and really understanding the best basic practices for using Google Docs, how a online word processor differs from a static than a traditional word processor, some of the cool things that we can do with it. I'm looking forward to getting you up to speed on all of the different Google Docs over the next month. So with that, let's get to the Q&A.